Chapter 260, A Four-Armed Fierce Ape. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. A giant savage beast rushed toward Zhang Yuochen and completely covered Zhang Yuochen the moment he rushed out of the array. Animal spirits fixing beasts. The spiritual blood inside Zhang Yuochen's body poured out from his paws, transformed into beams of crimson aerial fog and formed illusory images of a giant sacred elephant and dragon behind his back. Oh, the elephant and dragon started to roar, which formed fluctuation of raging forces and sound waves. The illusory images of the elephant and dragon rushed toward the herd of savage beasts at the same time. Dozens of savage beasts crashed down in a bloody mess at the same time. 11 of them were shaken to death and the other savage beasts were badly injured with broken legs or injured bones. Swish. Zhang Yuochen took out a space bracelet and took the 11 dead savage beasts into it as quickly as possible. The internal space of the storage bracelet was filled immediately. The internal space is still too small. I need to make a new storage bracelet with more space when I have time. Zhang Yuochen put the full storage bracelet away, took another storage bracelet out and placed it on his wrist in preparation. After all was in order, Zhang Yuochen rushed forward to kill the four-armed fierce ape. The four-armed fierce ape and iron-armored black bear had the strongest power among the 5 4th-level savage beasts and were the greatest threats to the defense strategy. Only if they were killed would defense strategy be able to stay up longer. Boom. Under the urging of Hanku, the first attacking array, the 8-Dragon Wind Fire formation was activated. The light from 54 formation flags connected together to form a giant firestorm array. 4 gigantic fire dragons and 4 gigantic storm dragons of more than 100 meters each rushed out from the giant firestorm array. Attack. The first gigantic fire dragon flew up from the city and soared up into the sky to attack the flying savage birds. More than 10 giant savage birds were killed in only one attack and fell down from the sky. Attack. The first gigantic storm dragon flew from the city, directly towards the cloud-swallowing sparrow, a 4th-level savage beast, and crashed into it. Then the gigantic storm dragon's body split into hundreds of wind blades and completely covered the cloud-swallowing sparrow. The cloud-swallowing sparrow received more than 10 wounds from the wind blade. Large patches of blood and feathers began to rain down. Immediately, it flew away from the sky of Ji City and hid among the clouds. It did not dare to rashly approach Ji City, even for a 4th-level savage beast. They did not dare to lightly challenge the might of the array. At the same time, Zhang Yuochen had already rushed toward the front of the four-armed fierce ape. He killed more than 10 savage beasts along the way and filled another space bracelet. When the four-armed fierce ape found the fragile human behind itself, the ape opened its eyes as wide as a wash basin. Then the ape roared, showing its huge teeth. Howl. The large roar formed a whirlwind that brought with it the stench of fish and blew up the sand and stones on the ground. The four-armed fierce ape held a huge stone tray, which was like a small hill, in his hand and threw it at Zhang Yuochen's head, kicking off with the balls of his feet. Zhang Yuochen jumped 7 meters high, slightly borrowing strength while in the air. He moved several meters towards the right to avoid the stone tray and swung the sword toward the neck of four-armed fierce ape. The four-armed fierce ape waved its arms and struck out its palm toward Zhang Yuochen's chest. His fist was as big as Zhang Yuochen's body. The four-armed fierce ape was an inferior savage beast. Its power was strong enough to rip apart warriors in the mid-stage of the heaven realm. Thus, when it struck out with a fist, Zhang Yuochen did not dare to meet it head-on. When Zhang Yuochen felt the fist moving toward him, he drew back his bodily movements, held his sword with both of his hands and chopped it down on the four-armed fierce ape's fist. Break. His hands rose as the sword fell. The Abyss Ancient Sword splintered the armor of four-armed fierce ape and cut a chunk of meat from its arm. The moment the four-armed fierce ape was injured, it realized that the human before him was not something to be lightly provoked. It raised the stone tray and immediately stepped back. Actually, the four-armed fierce ape's strongest power was its defensive power, which was even able to shake 7th-level genuine martial arms. Unfortunately, the Abyss Ancient Sword in Zhang Yuochen's hands was a 9th-level genuine martial arms. It was even sharper than a holy weapon. The Abyss Ancient Sword was perhaps even able to damage the legendary dragon scale of the brute dragon, let alone the defenses of the four-armed fierce ape. Although the power of the four-armed fierce ape is much stronger than me, its reaction speed is slow and it has little intelligence. Thus, the sharpness of the Abyss Ancient Sword should be able to kill it. Zhang Yuochen performed the Shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon, transformed into several shadows with mysterious steps and attacked four-armed fierce ape. If he was able to kill the four-armed fierce ape, the blood of a 4th level savage beast was enough to help the sacrifice rise to a higher level. Link Xiansu sat on the back of a 3-head fire crow and saw Zhang Yuochen attacking the four-armed fierce ape. She immediately gave an order to the fire cloud wolf to attack Zhang Yuochen at once. Oh woo! A piece of fire cloud transformed by genuine chi fire gushed out from fire cloud wolf's body and rushed towards Zhang Yuochen at its fastest speed. Zhang Yuochen realized the danger when he took a glance in the direction of the fire cloud wolf. It was already difficult for Zhang Yuochen to fight against a single four-armed fierce ape. Thus, another fire cloud wolf's attack was certain to defeat him. What's more, considering the speed of fire cloud wolf, it may be impossible for Zhang Yuochen to escape back to Ji City. I have no choice but to fight to the death. If I'm unable to kill the four-armed fierce ape, it will be harder for me to defeat it the next time. Zhang Yuochen released the space domain immediately, covering hundreds of square meters around, including the four-armed fierce ape. Sacred Plenilune Sword. Zhang Yuochen bounced up from the ground and bent his body into a bow shape with all his bones joined together. Then he held the hilt of the sword and chopped toward the head of the four-armed fierce ape with the strength of his wrist. The weight of the Abyss Ancient Sword was more than 500 kilograms after activating the inscriptions on it. Thus, it was possible to imagine the power of the sword. Meanwhile, the body of the four-armed fierce ape emitted a pop sound. Its two giant arms in front struck at the same time and punched towards Zhang Yuochen's chest. Link Xiansu looked at him from a distance and put on a smile. Too young and too naive. I can't believe he thought that he was able to stand against a four-armed fierce ape. Naive. If someone only observed the trail of the four-armed fierce ape's fist, they would think that Zhang Yuochen was going to be hit by the giant fist. Warriors of the Heaven Realm were unable to stand against the punch of a four-armed fierce ape. Zhang Yuochen's cultivation had just reached the Earth Realm. Thus, he would probably be punched into a bloody mess. However, Link Xianzu's jaw dropped in the next moment. She saw that Zhang Yuochen had chopped off the head of the four-armed fierce ape and her entire person jumped up. She shouted, "How could it be?" Just now, she witnessed the four-armed fierce ape punching toward Zhang Yuochen, but its giant fists suddenly stopped for a while. Zhang Yuochen seized the chance when the four-armed fierce ape stopped. He jumped up, cut down on the head of the four-armed fierce ape and split the giant head into halves from the globula. PFFFT. The four-armed fierce ape became more berserk with its head split open and suddenly punched dozens of times. The four-armed fierce ape was in its death throes. Each fist was striking out randomly, yet each strike was more powerful than the last. One of its fists landed on Zhang Yuochen and the force threw him out hard. Zhang Yuochen stuck the Abyss Ancient Sword in the ground to steady his body, but he realized that his left scapula had moved due to the punch and felt a burning ache radiating out from his left shoulder. Boom. After a moment, the four-armed fierce ape finally died. His body leaned back and it fell heavily to the ground. Zhang Yuochen half knelt against the pain from his left shoulder and let out a long sigh when he saw that the four-armed fierce ape was as dead as a doornail. Despite the perilous situation, it was worthwhile to finally kill four-armed fierce ape despite receiving some injuries. The fire cloud wolf in the distance was furiously indignant with its fur standing like sticks of flaming steel needles. Its throat had turned crimson like the lava surging inside its stomach. Suddenly, the fire cloud wolf opened its bloody mouth and spat out a fireball 3 meters in diameter towards Zhang Yuochen. Oh no! Zhang Yuochen rolled over and stood up with a shout. Sacred Bell Sword. Although the power of the fire cloud wolf was weaker than the four-armed fierce ape, the former one's speed and wisdom surpassed the latter's. Thus, the fire cloud wolf was much more terrifying than the four-armed fierce ape. Even warriors in the mid-stage of the Heaven Realm would be killed if they met the fire cloud wolf. Swish. Zhang Yuochen waved the sword in one hand and performed the sword technique quickly and intensively to form a huge bell sword. Boom. When the fireball landed on the bell sword, it knocked the bell sword out directly. Naturally, Inside the bell sword, Zhang Yuochen was also been thrown out in a parabola shape. He knocked heavily into the wall with a bang. After clashing with the bell sword, the fireball 3 meters in diameter exploded at once and turned the surroundings into a sea of flames. Hundreds of miles around the explosion were covered by burning fire. Zhang Yuochen, standing on the wall, Han Ku was extremely worried about Zhang Yuochen as she stared at the sea of fire. With her palm pressed on the array inscription, Han Ku immersed the genuine Qi in to control the 8-dragon wind fire formation. Then a gigantic storm dragon was lured into charging at the fire cloud wolf, where the gigantic storm dragon past all the inferior stage savage beast were killed by the wind blade, leaving the ground stained with their blood. The fire cloud wolf was also afraid to fight against the gigantic storm dragon directly, so it stepped back to stay away from the dragon. Bang! All of a sudden, a figure surrounded by fire rushed out of the sea of fire and charged at the body of the 4-armed fierce ape. After taking the body of the 4-armed fierce ape into the storage ring, Zhang Yuochen immediately rushed back because he would be safe as long as he was back in the array. Naturally, the fire cloud wolf was completely infuriated when it saw Zhang Yuochen's figure. It did not believe that the fragile human was still alive. The speed of the fire cloud wolf had reached the speed of sound. In seemingly just a moment, it charged to Zhang Yuochen's back. Reaching out with a sharp claw, it swiped down at Zhang Yuochen's head. 2 thunder pearls thrown out by Zhang Yuochen transformed into 2 streaks of lightning and struck at the fire cloud wolf. Clap! 2 loud bangs rang out. The 2 thunder pearls exploded at the same time, transforming into 2 streaks of thunderbolts. Then dozens of lines of lightning condensed and struck at the fire cloud wolf at the same time.